One. Hi, good evening. Welcome to the Bigelow Library's Zoom presentation with Cheryl Landes. Is that how you pronounce your name, Cheryl?
That's correct.
And Cheryl, tonight, as part of our How to Get a Job series, Cheryl's going to be speaking about successful video interviewing. So keep in mind, this is a series. We're getting towards the tail end of our How to Get a Job series. But if you have missed any of the videos that we've already, or Zoom presentations that we've already done, you can check those out on the Bigelow Library's YouTube channel and on the Bigelow Library's Facebook page. And so you can go back and review, and feel free to drop in as many times as you need to until you feel comfortable with the things that have been presented. Also, please check out the Bigelow Library's website, where we have a number of other, both live, we're just beginning to get into our live presentations, live events in September, and our other Zoom presentations. We're actually continuing to work hard behind the scenes. We have curbside pickup here at the library, so the library is still up and running. So that being said, that plugging the Bigelow Library, Cheryl, would you like to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your work in communication?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Yes, my name is Cheryl Landes, and I am a freelance technical writer primarily. I also write technical marketing content. I have a travel blog, and I'm working on some personal projects, which are memoirs and a nonfiction mystery book right now. So I'm kind of all over the place with writing. My business name is Tabby Cat Communications. I named it after my first cat as an adult. He was a 20-pound Maine Coon that we found at the Seattle Animal Shelter when my late husband and I lived up there. And so I've been in business now for almost 30 years. Yeah, it's hard to believe that it's been that long. And people might wonder, well, what the heck is my connection to Massachusetts with me living on the West Coast? I moved to Newton, Massachusetts in 2001 for a job. It was about 3 weeks before 9/11. I was living in New York City, Staten Island, before that for a year and a half, and the company I work for there closed. And then I got the job in Massachusetts. I lived there for 5 years, and then I moved back to Seattle and stayed there for quite a while. I moved to Vancouver, Washington, where I live right now. Vancouver, Washington is just across the Oregon-Washington border. So I am on the north shore of the Columbia River. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. And Portland, Oregon is on the south shore of the Columbia River. Vancouver, Canada is a 5-hour drive from here. So that kind of gives you an idea of where I'm located. Before the pandemic hit, I still traveled to Massachusetts a lot because I worked on site for I have a lot of clients out there, and I worked on site for a lot of them. But now, of course, I'm working remotely because I can't travel out there. Even if I wanted to travel at this point, I cannot because of restrictions in Massachusetts. Washington residents are not allowed to fly into Massachusetts right now. So I'm here plugging away. So today's presentation is going to be focusing primarily on my experiences with interviewing for work. And so I'm going to be talking about tips, and also talk about the 2 experiences that I've had with video interviewing. There's like 2 different types of video interviews that I've had. And so we'll cover those first. I should go to the agenda now. And then we'll talk about some tips for interviewing by video. And I have given this presentation before, except today I did add a couple of things, and it usually has been running about an hour. So let's dive in. The 2 types of video interviews that I've had experience with is face-to-face. And that may sound funny that I'm calling it face-to-face when it's a video interview, but basically it's just where the person who, or people who are interviewing me and me, we're both looking at each other through a computer screen. So it really is face to face, even though we have a computer in between us. And then the other one is what I call a recorded video interview. It's not interactive. So you're basically, what you're doing is you're recording your answers to questions on a computer screen into a computer system, and then it's saved in the cloud for the company who's screening the interviews, and then they can deliver those to different people to look at. So we'll dive more into each of these. The first one, as I mentioned, is face-to-face video interviews. So this is a Zoom screenshot. I didn't take this. It was a photo that I downloaded from a free photo site called Unsplash. But this is basically what it's like. Or depending on how the screen is set up, you might see the person talking to you, and then as you're talking to them, then they'll see you. So depending on how your settings are adjusted in Zoom, you could see both people at the same time, or you might be seeing one person as they're talking. The most recent face-to-face video interview I had was about 2.5 weeks ago. I interviewed for a contract in New York City, and it was going to be virtual. It was writing content for a startup company. And so during that interview, I had one person who was asking the questions, and it was a very short interview, probably one of the shortest interviews I've ever had. It was 20 minutes. And she was very specific on what she was asking. It was mostly about my experience with the software that I had used, that the company uses, and the types of writing I had done. So that was it, very, very short. The other type of interview that I mentioned is a recorded video interview. And so there's absolutely no interaction with any humans. It's just recording answers to your questions. This particular interview that I had, it's been now about 2.5 years ago. The last one I had was for a huge corporation, and the job was going to be based in Chicago. The whole system started out where I received an invitation to a link, and when I clicked on the link, I came to this landing page where there was an instructional video. And so I've tried to replicate this as much as I could. I didn't think about taking screenshots at the time. So what you're seeing is the best I could do to replicate the experience. So there was a person on the screen, and it was a 2 to 3 minute video with instructions about how to be successful at using the platform where I would be recording the answers to my questions. And so after that played, I was able to click on some buttons. They were like navigation buttons, kind of like, I don't know if you can see the bottom corner of my screen here. There were arrows where I could move forward to go to the next screen. And so when I went to the next screen, there was a question. So the question was on the left-hand side of the screen. And in this case, there were 6 questions having to do with different types of information that the hiring manager and the HR manager was gathering for this position. And I'm trying to remember all the questions, and I know I'm not going to. The one on the screen, how do you keep up with professional development, was one of them. The first one was, tell me about yourself. And then there were some other questions about how I would handle difficult people, and some others about how I would handle the job basically. And so I would see a question on the left-hand side of the screen. This window where the woman is was actually, I could see myself in that window, which was really a different experience. I'm watching myself talk to myself here. And when I was ready to record, where the time clock is down below the picture, there was a button that I could click to record, and then the timer would go on. I had 3 minutes to answer the question. If I didn't like the first attempt, I could record it one more time, and that was it. So I only had 2 chances to answer the question the way that I wanted to. After that, I would have to go on to the next question. Underneath this timer here where it says 3 minutes, there were navigational buttons so I could go back and forth through the questions. I could, let's say, if I answered the first question, tell me about yourself, and then I saved that response, and then I went on to the next question, but I didn't re-record my response for the first question. If I decided that I wanted to do that later, I could go back and do that. But again, I only had one more chance. So it was like 2 chances and you're done. So this is how that particular video interview worked. When I was finished with all 6 questions, there was a button that I clicked to move forward. And there was a message that I would hear back from somebody within a few days. It took about a week in this particular instance. And in the end, I didn't get this job, but I did get some more information about what would happen to the video interview after I found out that I didn't get the job. What happened at this company is they saved the videos for 18 months in some kind of a cloud interface. So if there were any other job openings that came up and somebody happened to find my video and they wanted to review my responses, they could do that. So it was actually a way that someone could still consider candidates after their interviews had been recorded for another position, which was kind of interesting. I never did hear back from them, so I don't know how often that people ever get contacted again after they have been through an interview process like this, and then they're rejected. So it would be interesting to find out about that. So now we're going to dive into tips for interviewing by video. And so we're going to be talking about how to prepare for the interview and how to participate in the interview and then following up after the interview. Many of the tips that we'll be covering here are similar to conducting a in-person face-to-face interview, but there are a few subtle differences. So in preparation for a video interview, the first thing that you want to do, because now, especially, all of us are interviewing from home because of the pandemic, so we're limited on where we can go. We want to find a quiet, well-lit space. It can be challenging, I know, with when we have children, or I don't have children, but I have my mother lives with me and she's hard of hearing. So sometimes she doesn't realize that I'm actually in a meeting on my computer because I'm on my computer so much. So sometimes we have to make adjustments for that. Well-lit spaces can also be challenging. Where I live in Western Washington, which we're well known for our rain most of the year or cloudy days. And so that can make my space darker. So finding ways to light up my apartment has been challenging. Although recently I did find they're called ring lights through Amazon. And the one I bought, I don't have it hooked up today, but it's a clip-on light. And so I can clip it onto my bookshelf, which is next to my desk, and it shines down just enough to where it can give a lot of extra light in my little corner office here. My home office is the corner of our dining room. Also adjusting your webcam to eye level. One of the tips that some speakers have provided to me about this, which is a great idea and it works really well, is to put a little sticker or a little sticky note or some kind of a picture next to your camera, so that when you're speaking, you're forced to look at that little sticker or image or whatever it is, because it's so easy for your eyes to wander away from where the camera is. So then it doesn't look like you're actually looking into the camera. I'm not sure right now if anyone can even see me, because when I shared my screen, my slide covers the entire screen, which I think Zoom has made some changes recently, because the last time I did a presentation, I could see a little row above my slide presentation where the attendees were, and I could still see my slides. So I think this is
Cheryl, we can see you.
Oh, you can see me.
Yeah, participants
Oh,
on the right-hand side. You're not full screen. You're obviously, kind of over to the side. But yeah, we can see you. And Leslie.
Oh, okay. Okay, interesting. Yeah, it's changing again. Okay. Well, that's good to know. At least you can see me. Let's see. So check the light sources I mentioned earlier. Make sure that you have ample light so that it doesn't look like you're sitting in the dark. And also be careful if you have to sit in front of a window. Right now, you probably see what looks like a window behind me. What it actually is the blinds open to the sliding doors to my patio. And I've tried to turn on the lights in my kitchen to balance out the lights so that you can see me. I also have a light behind my desk, but if I turn that on, then my face is going to look red. It's going to look like I've been out drinking all night or something. So we don't want to do that either. So it's really good to check your lighting situation and just see how it's going to appear on your video, on your computer screen before you actually go into the interview. Also check your sound. Right now, I am just speaking through my computer speakers. Another thing that's highly recommended is to get a good headset and hook it up to your computer. I do have a headset, and oh gosh, I forgot the name of it. That's terrible. My brain is dead. My headset was about $35 through Amazon. And for some reason, it's not working on this computer. This computer is about 2 years old, and I bought the headset about 6 months ago. But for some reason, they don't like each other, and I need to do some more work to make sure that that's working again. Also, dress as if you're going to a face-to-face interview on site. It's appearance, no matter where you are, if it's on video or if it's on, elsewhere, that's very important. You want to look professional and look the part. Also, before the interview, research the company and make sure that you have questions ready to ask if you're not in a recorded video situation like I was for that one big company, because at the end, the interviewer is going to ask if you have questions. I can't remember. There might have been one situation a few years ago where the interviewer didn't ask whether I had questions, but usually, almost always they do.
Speaking of that, hate to interrupt, Susan does have a question. Do you want the participants to be able to just ask you and interrupt and ask questions if they're coming through chat? Susan's question was, she said she's been putting, I've been putting my surface on a box to get it eye level, which I think is a really good suggestion. She said, do you have any other suggestions?
I would suggest that, or what I've done is I've used books. I have plenty of books around here. I love books. And so I will just stack my laptop on some books if I need to adjust my height. Anything works as long as the interviewer can't see it. You know, if it works, go for it.
So, and my first question was, do you want the participants to unmute themselves so they can directly ask questions, or do you want me to continue to monitor the chat line?
Why don't you just go ahead and continue to monitor the chat?
Okay, sure.
And then it seems like I've been looking at the time here. I think I'm going through this a little bit faster than I thought I would. So we'll probably have quite a bit of time at the end to go through questions.
Sure. So I'll just.
So do you have anything else or right now?
No, that was it. So I'll just, you'll probably just see me, you know, around the Bigelow library. It'll get a little yellow. And so I will then interrupt if another question comes through. So on that note, Susan, Leslie, feel free to add what you need to do in the chat, and I'll monitor it for you. We should have discussed that before we started.
Yeah, just go ahead and speak up because I can't see anybody. so otherwise I wouldn't know. I think once I stop screen sharing, I'll be okay. So we'll see. Let's see. So yeah, so make sure you have questions to ask if you are doing a face-to-face video interview. And then also remember to relax. It's hard. Interviewing is hard no matter which way you're doing it. But with video interviewing, it's a new experience for most of us. And so that just adds more with the nerves and the stress factors. So do whatever you need to do before an interview, take deep breaths, meditate, go for a walk, whatever works the best for you. Do that just to be relaxed. And then participating in the interview, we have sort of talked about this a little bit, but make sure that you look into the camera. So when you're looking into the camera, it looks like that you're looking at the person that you're talking to. And so that's very important. We're always hearing keep eye contact, and that's the equivalent of keeping eye contact in this environment. And avoid looking tense. That can also be a challenge with video interviewing, especially for those who don't spend much time in front of a camera. And this is also a new environment for us. It's easy to feel tense when you're in this new experience. So do the best you can to avoid that. Doing, meditation or taking deep breaths before the interview can help with that. And also taking your time, if you can do that. Like, for example, what I'm trying to say is, if someone's asking a question, maybe just kind of quietly take a breath before you answer. And that will also help you avoid looking as tense or feeling as tense. It's amazing what breathing can do in a situation like this. Another one that I used to hear this more when back in the days of when we used telephones a lot, when we didn't have our smartphones and we were talking on the what we would call now old-fashioned telephones. Speak with a smile. And we also need to exercise that same practice on video, because in an environment like this, sometimes our speech can come across differently, and it may not come across as pleasantly as we think it is. So if we speak with a smile, that will just bring up the voice in a more positive tone and help us sound like that, you know, we have this positive attitude in the situation. And answer questions confidently. Again, with this video environment, it just it can make us nervous all around. And so exuding confidence as best as we can by, you know, avoiding being tense and speaking with a smile and just being prepared will help us do that. After the interview, follow the same practices that you would with a regular face-to-face interview. Send thank you notes to the interviewers. If this is a situation where you're interviewing face-to-face, if you're interviewing in a recorded situation, like I did for the one company, it's hard because you don't know who is going to see these videos. So there's really no one to target unless you just contact the main contact that sent you the invitation, the link invitation to the video interview. And that's what I did. That person was the HR manager for this company. So I just followed up with her after the interview. And that goes to the second point. I jumped in ahead of that. Check in with your contact if the interview questions are recorded. Just follow up with any questions that you might have for that person, or if you didn't get information in the recordings about how the process would follow after that, just double check on that. In my situation, I did get information at the end of the recordings on what would happen next, but it's still good to check in. So that is all I had, and it looks like we're up at the half hour now. So if there are any other questions, feel free to ask, and I will put my contact information up here on the screen. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me after the fact, and I will do my best to answer them.
I'm sorry, I had muted myself. Leslie, you're now currently unmuted, and Susan, feel free to unmute yourself if you have any questions. Cheryl, that was fascinating. It never occurred to me that you could actually do a recorded interview as well, too. That was a really interesting way to be asked to do an interview. Yeah, I appreciate the fact that you even pulled it off. I would assume that that would be extremely unnerving.
It was.
Yeah, interviewing in a can. That's a very interesting way to go about doing it. I imagine, though, if you're working for a tech company, then they're going to want to just go back and review these things periodically. So thanks for saying that. I didn't even know that such a thing existed.
Yeah, I've given this presentation to a couple of other groups, the Tewksbury job seekers and Westford job seekers, and there were 2 or 3 people in both of those meetings who had had interviews like that, but they seem to be fairly uncommon still. This company that I interviewed for, it was a huge company. I'm not going to give the name because this is being recorded, but I can see why something like this would be, I don't know if more convenient would be the right word for it. It probably is in a lot of ways, because then the HR manager doesn't have to schedule interview times across a wide variety of time zones. This company has offices all over the world, so they could just pop in whenever, and they could view the answers to these questions.
No, you're absolutely right, and I imagine it saves. Obviously, we're doing video interviewing now because of Corona, but I assume, much like I mentioned before, that the library will probably continue to do Zoom presentations. I would assume that companies, this saves a great deal of money.
Yeah,
You
it
can not have-
does. It would, yeah. And this video, actually, this interview that I had was way before the pandemic. So yeah, they were doing this. Let's see, when did I do this? It was in 2018 when I had that interview. So yeah, so about 2 years before. It was in the winter of 2018.
So thanks for giving out your contact information. This is, like I said, going to be recorded. So I'm hoping that even if you get an email from either Susan or Leslie, you'll know who you're getting the email from. If it does go out and it's recorded, I appreciate the fact that you would be gracious enough to perhaps answer questions for people. The advantage of doing a Zoom presentation is that people can drop in at any time, and I'm hoping that we'll continue to get it. Actually, the recordings are getting some fairly decent foot traffic, so I believe that there was another gentleman who emailed me earlier today saying he would be able to make it, but that he would be viewing the recording. So might be getting an email from him.
So I was looking on your website last night on this. So if anyone wants to watch the recordings, it looks like they contact you to get the link. Is that how it's working?
What I'm doing is I'm posting the link, and we'll post it on our website too once it's up. That the link will be made available on the Bigelow Library. So if you go onto YouTube and you just put in the keywords Bigelow Library, it will pull up the Bigelow Library's YouTube channel. The same holds true with Facebook. If you go on Facebook and you're looking at Bigelow Library, and these recordings, these How to Get a Job recordings are there, as well as our other presentations that we've been doing via Zoom. There's musical performances and poetry and a couple other things we've done. So Cheryl, I'd like to thank you so much. If there are no more questions, I think we can end the presentation, but thank you very much. We will indeed be in touch. I'm hoping that to do another series of these How to Get a Job things, and probably most likely in October.
Okay. Yeah, let me know. I have one presentation for Westford one day in October. So we can work around that or do it later.
Sure. So thank you very much, and good night from me. Feel free, those of you who are still on, to continue to ask questions. I will stop the recording now, so that if you have personal questions, you can certainly ask them. So thank you, Cheryl. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. And I put my email in the chat too, just in case anybody needs it.
Yeah. I think I heard you a couple years ago